So hey everybody, the purpose of this video is to take a look at progressive environmentalism. This is in chapter 20 and it serves kind of as a link between the chapter 17 in American YAWP, that focus on the West and the Western frontier and Western lands, and moving into this and moving into the progressive movement, trying to make progress for the country as everything is changing. The reality on this is that this is going to become the beginning of a kind of like the modern 20th century environmentalist movement, but it's going to have a little bit of an interesting path to get there. So here we go. So the origins of the environmentalist movement goes back to the creation of national parks. Abraham Lincoln was the first president to kind of talk about getting national parks as a way to kind of, I guess, hold on to the pristine nature of some of the American frontier. And by 1872, Yellowstone National Park is established by well, I guess that's Ulysses S. Grant as president at that time. Yellowstone is up in the northwestern corner of Wyoming, if you've got a map kind of close by, and it's a huge expanse of land with a lot of variety of the terrain. There's some foothills going into part of the Rockies. There's some plains. There's a lot of Old Faithful. The geyser is there, but this is actually happening at the same point in time as some of the Native American resource disputes, land disputes out there in the Great Plains. And so this kind of feeds into this, into the desire to sort of maintain the pristine nature of the land, really for a United States perspective, not really on a Native American perspective at this point in time anyway. By 1890, the second national park, so a big gap between the first and the second national park, but in 1890, Yosemite National Park, which is in Northern California, it's established. And this is going to be kind of a touchstone point for the best way to make use of these lands. Because in Northern California, Yosemite is closer to a settled American United States settlements in Northern California. It's only a few hours by train out to the coast by San Francisco. And so this is going to be the spot where you see a little bit more debate coming into play about how to make proper use of these Western lands. So the two sides of the debate, there's the conservationist movement and there's the preservation movement. So John Muir is the gentleman with the big beard on the left in this photo. And this picture is taken at Yosemite Park in California. Muir is one of the founders of the Sierra Club. It is a naturist, environmentalist, preservationist organization, still around these days, pretty vocal in their advocacy of protecting the nation's the pristine nature of the country's land. The preservation idea with these parks and with the environmentalist movement that they're taking, they feel like that the land should be preserved as it exists in nature. So that means to them there should be no development of the land at all. No settlers coming in, no use of industry coming in. The real concern coming in here has got to do with the forestry industry coming into what they want to preserve as national forests, and they want to prevent that from taking place. And so this is kind of an environmentalist stance that's taking a strong stance against economic development in these areas. Now, the second progressive view on this is the conservationist view, and this is the other guy in this picture is President Theodore Roosevelt. So Roosevelt and the conservationists, what they are promoting is an idea of, yes, protect the lands that are there, but make some economic use out of the land, but do it in a way that is going to be responsible. It's going to be responsible both to the land, but also to the people that would benefit from the development there. So the growth of the U.S. Forestry Service, the director's name is a guy named Gifford Pinchot. They believe that there should be some protection of forest lands, but there should also be other forests that are marked for the lumber industry and allowing them to really make some economic development opportunities in some parts of, well, in some parts of what the Sierra Club and the preservationists would say as the pristine Western identity for the United States with these Western lands. Probably the most notable place where this debate comes through is with the area of Ch20 inside of Yosemite Park here in Northern California. So if we kind of take a quick zoom in as to what's going on at Ch20, let's see if we can get an idea of what we're talking about here. So this picture of Hetch is not 1913. This picture is actually taken, I think, in 2007. You can see you can see the mountains there, and you can see this big mountain lake that is there. But the reality is, this lake isn't natural. It is man-made. If we back up and we take a look at how this looked in a photo taken back in I think the photo was taken in 1911, a couple years before the decision on this. As we lay it in, you could see the lake wasn't always there, that this was a community with the river kind of running through the middle of it. And the decision was made as a part of this conservationist movement to dam the river and to flood this floodplain, permanently flood the floodplain, and create a reservoir that could be used for drinking water for folks out in Northern California, along the California coast. This is a real good example of a conservationist stance, which is not letting there be vast amounts of industrial development, but still making use of the land in some ways that's going to be of benefit, economic and social benefit, to the people that are living in the area. So this is another one of these big stances that Theodore Roosevelt takes in terms of his presidency. We've seen him show up with, his actions against trusts. We've seen him show up with his actions kind of promoting overseas trade for the United States. And so he's really kind of a strong economic stance, but also trying to do things that are going to be taking care of, kind of what he sees as part of the identity for the nation out here with the Western lands. By the time you get to 1916, the conservationist and preservationist movement, the debate kind of gets a bit more, formalized, I guess is the right way to put it. It becomes part of what's happening within the national government, the federal government, with the creation of the National Park Service. It is noteworthy here that the National Park Service is created 40 years after the first national park is established. And so there's this ongoing debate that happens over the course of a generation. And the National Park Service, they're kind of the caretakers, representing a federal government perspective, but also trying to represent the will of the people in regards to what's going to happen with the lands of the United States. Something that's going to continue to morph and evolve into the environmentalist debates as we get further into the 20th century. But this is where things stand by the end of the Progressive Era. Yet another example of how there is economic development that's being not necessarily checked, but being brought into an actual conversation about how best to maintain the lands of the country.